The sun rises above the hills and mountains of Scotland. It is dawn as we now enter the Highlands of Scotland, a magical and beautiful place that we will explore today, the longest day of the year. We'll be travelling to many places along the lochs of the coastline of the beautiful Highlands of Scotland. Let's begin our journey now as we start in a small town. Here we are in the tiny village of Ploughton. The waters are the waters of the Loch Carron. And if we look in the distance, we can see Bilach Naba and Bien Ban mountains. We begin our journey traveling northward from Ploughton. We now pass by Loch Achawois. This is the body of water that you see before me. In the distance, Let Gowan Forest is seen. We now traverse one of those glaciated created valleys you see in the distance. There is also far off Loch Marie, which is a loch that connects with Loch Ewe and then into the sea eventually. Let's continue as we head towards Benai National Forest. Here is a better view of Loch Marie in the distance. Welcome to Benai National Reserve. This is a reserve of pine forest, in particular the Caledonian pinewood, which is the last remaining largest fragment left in the northwest. It also consists of many rare species variants of dwarf shrubs, such as the shrub heath and the western variant, as you can see in the distance. The pines here live within 12 to 300 meters above sea level. The Scot pine actually is genetically quite different from the western Scots pine. Other rare species of plants, such as the tufted saxifrage and brook saxifrage, are found in Benai National Reserve. We can certainly admire the beauty and the greenery of this beautiful woodlands, one of the last remaining in Scotland, with the foreboding mountains in the distance. Benai consists of a complex mountain massif in the Torridon area of Westeros, south of Loch Marie. It's a ridge of mountains with spurs and summits, formed 800 million years ago from the sediments of many rivers that form the landscape. If you notice, the white-colored rocks are Cambrian basaltic quartzite rocks. The highest summit is Rodstack Ma, also called Big Red Stack, highest point being 1010 meters. We now make our journey to Victoria Falls, named after Queen Victoria, who visited it in 1877. In the distance, you can see the Sleaterdale Forest. Let's walk along now as we visit Victoria Falls. Here we can see Victoria Falls. It lies between Benai, where the water flows down from the river Abaim Garbage, which is a river that flows from Loch Garbage into Loch Marie. Notice the rock formation here, made up of Labissian, Gegnis rocks, and sandstone rocks. In the distance, you can see a spectacular view of Loch Marie. Now, let's look at these rocks as we take a sample of the rocks to investigate further the Labissian rocks. Here we go. Welcome to Gairloch, also called Short Loch. In the distance you can see the small island of Glas Elaine. In Viking times, the Short Loch served as a haven place to shelter the boats for the Vikings. These lochs also are homes to many large sharks. In the distance further on you can see Shron Nan Gaspar, the island behind the smaller island. We are now overlooking Grunad Bay, with Grunad Island within the bay, as you can see in the distance. It's 2 kilometers long and 1 kilometer in width and oval shaped. The island of Grunad was actually used for anthrax experimentation in 1942. It later became decontaminated in the late 20th century. It is actually just about 1 to 2 kilometers at the nearest point to the mainland of Great Britain. Here it is, the beautiful island lying within Grunad Bay. We now make our way further up north, and here we are at Loch Broom. In the distance, far off, you can see the Summer Islands, an archipelago of islands that is uninhabited. It was called the Summer Islands because of crofters who put their sheep there to graze during the summertime. Closer up you can see the Isle of Martin, which is uninhabited and found in Loch Broom. Here we have another view of the Summer Islands way in the distance, and the loch before us is Little Loch Broom. What a beautiful sight, archipelago of the Summer Islands. Here is Little Loch Broom. We now drive further inward as we admire the beautiful pine, the Scottish pine trees of the Highlands of Scotland, along one of its rivers. Deep Freeze Mountains. Ice sheets covered Scotland until 15,000 years ago, then returned 2,000 years briefly. The ebb and flow of the glaciers helped to shape the land that you see before us now. We now drive along further down the coastline and up into the distance you can see Loch Lurgane. Notice how green and lush the vegetation are here. In fact, as we drive along Elphin now, we can notice how green the grass is here, and it is because of limestone soil which made the land much more fertile. Our journey continues to Knocken Crag, and in the distance you can see many huge mountains such as Bernard du Loch, 530 meters, Stock on Glen Cod, 494 meters, and the Grey Mountains way in the distance. There are also many lochs here, like Loch of Block Glen, Loch of Glen at the back, and Loch of White Carn. Here in Knocken Crag, man first discovered how rocks end up at different positions from where they were created, as well as why older rocks ended up on younger rocks. This was simply because of plate tectonics, which pushed the older rocks above the younger rocks. Here we can see fossils of pipe rock made from sand deposited on the edge of a long ago vanished ocean. If we look carefully, we can see the different layers. Two different layers are seen here, silt and mud layers that were deposited along the shallow sea 525 million years ago. There are also tribolite fossils that are found within the rock layers. So I went in search of monsters in the Loch of Highlands, but only found this, a Scottish red deer. Scottish red deers are actually much smaller than the European deers, and this is because of something called insular dwarfism, where animals evolve to the environment that they are in. So smaller environment results in smaller sized deers. Let's take a quick look at him as we run up Knocken Crag. Here we have a better look at the Scottish red deer. We make our way further north as we traverse the lochs and mountains of the Highlands. Note the layers of sand and gravel dumped by the great rivers that flowed across the land 1 billion years ago. The water, wind and frost carve out the many layers that we see before us, as illustrated here as I drove across the Highlands. Here we are now at Scory Bay, located halfway between Ullapool and Durness in the northwest coast of Scotland. Notice the blue-green waters. Quite beautiful, but also quite cold, maybe about 5 to 10 degrees Celsius. The bay is located next to the village of Scory, which is quite rural, only having 132 adult population. In the distance, you can see further highlands, but notice the beautiful waters of Scory Bay. If we look further on, we can see the North Atlantic Ocean. Again, it looks quite tropical and beautiful to swim in, yet very cold. We make our final destination on this summer solstice day to Smoo Cave. In the distance, you can see Jodha Smoo, which is a 600-meter long tidal gorge that was created by the collapse of the Smoo Cave with time. Let's make our journey now as we enter this amazing cave, which is actually a combination of a sea cave and a freshwater cave. The first chamber being made from the erosion by the sea, and this cave is about 40 meters in width or 130 feet wide, and its length is 272 feet or 83 meters long. It was formed between dark grey mottled Salmha Formation and the light grey Sangamo Formation. There is impenetrable quartz-like structures that prevent the cave from being eroded further. The second chamber is actually made from freshwater erosion dissolving carbonate dolomite rock, which we can see here. Again, we walk along the outside of the cave, which was once part of the cave, the gorge before us. You can see the pillars in the distance which would have supported the roofs that have now been collapsed. The beautiful gorge of Smoo. Thank you for joining me on the 6th episode of the Physical Geography of the Earth. As we have learned from the Highlands of Scotland, it's full of contrast with the lochs and the huge mountains. As in life, everything is full of contrast. We need to find a balance in it all. See you next time. Let's continue our journey now as we head up further into the Highlands of Scotland. Join me again next time as we continue part 2 of this episode.